Explore 1, Unit 4, Measuring Success. Watching. Chris Hadfield, Space Oddity. Page 78. Chris Hadfield, a Canadian astronaut, engineer, and pilot, charmed the world with his social media posts and musical performances while he was the commander of the International Space Station. In this interview, he talks about what inspired his career choice and gives tips for being successful.
He's a man of firsts, the first Canadian to walk in space, first to lead the International Space Station. He found himself in the headlines while orbiting our planet, not just for those accomplishments, but because of his tweets, Facebook updates, and musical collaboration with the earthly bound Barenaked Ladies. Now he's back in Ontario to pursue his next mission as a professor at the University of Waterloo. And with that, we welcome the man himself, Chris Hadfield. Hello.
Thanks. The earthly bound Barenaked Ladies. I've never heard them described that.
You are earthly bound now as well.
I am indeed.
You know, when you go up to space, you have to be completely self-sufficient. You have to be able to fix a toilet, perform basic surgery. Yeah. So when I heard you have this book out, I thought, astronaut reading a book, maybe he won't be good at that. But you are good at that.
I'm glad you think so.
Well, it's a good book, but it does make me want to ask you, what aren't you good at?
I don't do stuff that I'm not good at. So I, you and I will never dance. I don't think. I'm just not a very good dancer. I'm not a very good skater. I'll never play hockey. I wish I could. I love hockey, but I'm just sort of a mediocre skater. I just try and focus on the stuff that I think I can be successful at.
Why?
Because it's enough things, and it keeps me busy, and I like it all. So it's good to recognize your own limits. I'm not a very good painter or artist or sculptor or anything. So stick with your strengths.
All right. 21 years as an astronaut. You're now moving on. How did you know it was time now?
It's actually something I thought about when I got hired as an astronaut. You know, when the door opened, you look ahead and say, okay, well, how long will I be an astronaut? What's the logical time to close that door? My wife and I talked about it all the way through, and we decided when there was no chance that I would ever fly in space again, then it's time to think about doing something else. Her advice also was, I think, really good. And she said, when you have 2 days in a row where you don't want to go to work, where you wake up and you just don't want to go to that job, then it's time to think about another job. But for the last 21 years, there wasn't even one day. I just wanted to get to work earlier every single day, so that wasn't it. But having had a chance to fly 3 times in space, and as you say, to command the space station on the last one, I knew I wouldn't be flying in space again. I'd served longer than just about anybody has, and it just made sense.
Stag Island, southwestern Ontario. Take us back there as a young boy.
Like a lot of folks, my parents have a relatively simple cottage, a nice place to go to in the summer. I was lucky enough to have that as a kid growing up, but very, very basic provisions at the cottage. No television, no connectivity or anything. You just play outside. So the space race was going on. This summer I was going to turn 10. I'm born in August, so I was going to turn 10 that summer. And I'd watched 2001, A Space Odyssey, the movie. Went to a friend's birthday party the year prior, I think. And so that fantastic vision that Stanley and Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke put together of 2001, which is all surreal but very visually rich, was in my head. And meanwhile, that was really sort of happening with the space race and with my heroes, and had the big National Geographic poster of the moon above my bed at the cottage. And all of a sudden, it all came to a head in July of '69, and 3 people went to the moon, Mike and Neil and Buzz. And they were just people, Mike and Neil and Buzz. And one of them was called Buzz, which is, just great. And then Neil and Buzz got in their little spaceship and came down and landed on the moon, and I watched them. I had to go over to a neighbor's house because we didn't have a TV, but watched it in a neighbor's living room, crammed with people, which made it even more special. You could tell this was an event. And then went out afterwards and looked up at the moon itself. And it was hugely inspiring. And as a 9-year-old Canadian kid, I just saw that as an incredible, barely possible, brand new human adventure that I wanted to be part of.
Lots of 9-year-old kids sat gathered in rooms and watched that and were inspired by it, but you chased the dream. And it's sort of full circle about what your book's about, because there's sort of rules that you live by and advice or opinion of how people might want to live. their lives. It is interesting, though, because the rules by which you live your life are expect the worst,
Yes.
sweat the small things,
Yeah, yeah.
not quite the positive thinking vibe.
I'm a very positive thinker. I mean, have to be. I ride rockets, right? I've ridden 3 rockets to space. It helps if you're an optimist. But blind optimism is really the same thing as wishful thinking. You're not facing up to the reality of getting to where you want to be. You're just kind of hoping that you win the lottery and you don't even really buy a ticket. If you actually want to get to the direction of your dreams, you have to take steps. You have to do things. And if you just kind of visualize success, that doesn't get you any closer. All that does is I don't know, is make you feel good briefly, I think. But instead, if you visualize failure, if you regularly say, okay, how is this not going to happen? What's going to go wrong? What is scaring me out of this? You know, if you have to get up and make a speech in front of the United Nations, you know, what's scary about that? You know, they're going to laugh, they're going to heckle, I'm going to embarrass myself, I'll faint, I'll forget to do up my fly, my pants will fall down. Something scary might happen, right? And so let's look at each one of those things that's scary and really sweat the small detail. I'll forget my speech, I won't have it on the right piece of paper, something. Let's sweat the small stuff. Let's go in advance when there's time. Let's go through each one of those and figure out, you know, make sure I have a good belt on my pants. And if it's really worrisome, I'll get suspenders also. And just address each one. Right. So that then when someone says, and now introducing Chris Hadfield here at the General Assembly, and you walk up, no matter what happens, you have already simulated it really clearly in your mind. You've built a plan, you've built a backup plan, you've practiced it, you've simulated it all going badly. So when it starts to go well, you have a great comfort to it. And if it goes badly, you are not paralyzed by the fear of it. You are in fact relaxed and enabled by the reality of it.